So Edward, I'll get you started. Can you give me 2 minutes of what it is that you are passionate about and where you're from?
The potential is really mind-blowing. I see it, I often compare it with electricity, and if you think of electricity as a technology, it's about AC and DC and transformers and network grids, but the impact electricity had was everything from light at night and music and video and on demand to the internet, even space travel, right? It has completely changed how we live our lives. And for me, AI is that next big thing. It will drive new technologies like augmented reality and so forth, but it's also going to drive a big change in our behavior, and it will allow us to talk to computers that were previously not smart enough to understand us, and we'll just message people to send us the pizza, or I'll say, Alexa, send my wife her flowers on our anniversary, or her favorite flowers, right? And so we'll get away from all these windows and icons and keyboards, and that's what I'm looking forward to, this great new experiences that the AI will enable.
So you're excited?
A little bit.
That was excitement right there. Okay, Asa.
As excited as I ever get.
Asa.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely an AI optimist. I think it's an incredible opportunity that society has to right some wrongs, to be able to look forward to the future and have a huge influence and impact on it. AI can cover everything from healthcare to finance, customer experiences. Just the potential of it, the scope of it is so incredibly exciting. I think one of the challenges, which is also exciting, is understanding what's possible, and at the very highest levels of organizations, in government, in private enterprise, is really unlocking that thinking, to really see what is possible, not just in the future, but what's possible now, the utility that AI can offer, to be able to do some of the fundamentals within a business to make things move faster, to make decisions better, to improve customer experiences, and keep those stakeholders, those shareholders happy as well. There's some of the fundamentals of how businesses run can be changed through AI, and that's a really exciting prospect. And we're building machine learning tools that can help do some of those things, and really once the eyes are opened and the minds are opened, the kinds of ideas that companies are having, governments are having, and it was really quite exciting. There's a revolution coming, and we're definitely looking forward to being involved in it.
And you're excited.
Absolutely right.
Okay, Brent.
Yeah, so I'm privileged enough to be based in Hong Kong. I do work for a storage vendor, which is kind of weird, but in the AI space. But one of the most amazing, well, it's not the, one of the best privileges I have is I get to go to different countries and talk to different people about different problems that we can help solve. If I look at last week, we're talking about RCUs, roadside collection units that'll feed information to autonomous vehicles, and how AI is going to help drive that. Cancer research, and also universities, they want to run AI-driven courses. So rather than have a completely set curriculum, they're saying, well, let's just work this out as we go. As you work through one form or other of your direction of learning, we can alter that, and we can change the type of learning that's there. The types of uses that's being put to is just amazing. And again, from my side of it, I'm a kind of pragmatist. I'm a hardware guy. The bottom line is it's a privilege to work for a company that can deliver a platform that makes life simple, which is something that we do. We partner with the likes of NVIDIA, and we just deliver something that we can plug in, it works, and these outcomes can then be delivered. So for me, I look forward to my next trip to Korea, so I can go and talk to the internet companies about how they're using AI for customer service, or Singapore for research for military, or it's amazing. It's an amazing space. It's an amazing time to be involved. It's the beginning, and it's just massively exciting.
And you are definitely excited, Francis.
I'm definitely excited, but actually I'm probably more excited about the developing world and how they're deploying AI and how they're solving some big problems. And I'm probably more fearful actually for developed nations, and including New Zealand. I think what's really interesting in my conversations working with large organisations, executives and boards, is there's sort of an imagination that they're looking at their peers in the same sector and what they're doing in the AI space, and assuming that that's their only competition. So if someone's spending a bit of time and playing at the margins or the edges around AI, what they're not seeing is the disruptors who are coming in and are starting with AI as their first port of call, And so how do you get people when they're not shifting fast enough or understand the real risk is not the known competitor, or even within the marketplace or on this island or these groups of islands or however you want to see it. So part of it is that fear of not understanding what others have already understood from much bigger markets where they've got no legacy to have to go, well, we've got all this infrastructure, we have to unbundle and decouple, and we're going to have to figure out how we pay for it, and the margins are going to go down, and how we pay the dividends to our shareholders. When you're actually starting from a point of a problem and you've got no legacy, actually they've got a massive advantage. And I think exciting, but also slightly scary for the developed world.
Are you excited?
I'm overall very excited. Yeah.
And David?
Yes, thank you. I'm excited as well. When I keep learning about AI, I think about, on the one hand, you've got something very artificial, and on the other side, you've got something real and natural as humans and the world around us. And it's exciting to see how the two are converging and coming together. So just a little analogy that I think about is parenthood. So just put up your hand if you're a parent, could you? That's quite a few people. And so think about when you first had that baby and the care that you have for that baby and the celebration of all those little moments on the life journey of your child. And as your child grows up, there's bigger and bigger milestones, and the responsibility of a parent to care for that child so they basically grow into an adult that can contribute to the world. That's kind of how I think about AI. If AI is a baby or an infant, it's just at that very early days, and it's going to grow up. It's going to become far more mature, and we as humans, its creator, have quite the responsibility in this modern age to care for it and feed it and teach it in the right way, so it grows up to support us as humans and augment us to support our lives.
Awesome. So I'm going to get us started with our first question. Edward, I'm going to start with you. Look, in New Zealand, there aren't that many organizations, especially small businesses, using AI. So let's say we're a small to medium business in New Zealand, and I want to build an AI team. What am I looking for? Who am I hiring? Like, what does that team look like?
I'm coming from it from an experience point of view. For me, AI is not just a technology. It's all about the experience, about immersing the right information at the right time for the right people. And so, yes, there are some technical skills, and I see a lot of people going out there looking for data scientists, for example. And to be fair, there are not actually that many out there, so there are a lot of job titles, but the real knowledge is really only developing. And I see a lot of organizations having functional silos like we used to have 30 years ago around development teams, where you had BAs and developers and testers all separate. So I think if you want to build this AI capability, yes, you need some statistical, mathematical, algorithm guys, data science guys, and people that understand how the fundamentals work, the infrastructure in many ways. But you need to pair them up with people that you probably already have, like a UX designer or a subject matter expert, somebody that understands how the experience comes together for your customers or for the people that will use it.
Okay, so let's say I've created this not a silo, this area where my AI specialists are in the room, and they're going to have that technical capability that I perhaps may not have. So is that okay? Should Asa, should I just leave them there to do the thing? Sort of like the IT department was, 2 decades ago, where they were like just in that room and they magically came and fixed stuff, and then you put them back in that room. I sort of feel like that's where the AI specialists are going. So is it okay that we don't understand AI as company leaders, because we've got people in our team who can do this for us?
No, I think that's one of the dangers is treating AI as a technology, a department, whereas fundamentally it can change whole organizations. It should sit across whole organizations. It impacts everything from supply chain and purchasing through to after sales service. It needs to cut across everything. And one of the challenges that we see, and especially in capability development, is that senior management, that C-suite strategy. And that is one of the challenges we see in AI right now, is the adoption is being held back slightly by that lack of strategy, and treating it just as a function really does restrict it. When you take away that and say, how can AI transform our organization? It's kind of like saying, what can the internet do? 20 years ago, it's a similar kind of question. It can do everything. So where do you start? And that's really, I think the challenge for right here and now is choosing the business cases, choosing the capabilities to support those, and taking those steps forward.
So that leads me to Francis, your specialty about governance and boards. So if we're talking about making sure that leadership understand AI as well, or at least hopefully as well as some of our technical specialists do. Francis, do you think our boards are ready in New Zealand for this?
Certainly the boards that I've been working with are only aware of it in a very broad concept, and I think they're looking at a macro level. There's very little real authority within boards, and probably not enough pressure to actually start putting it at the top of every agenda in every board meeting. And I think that partially is, again, looking around and not seeing the uptake that perhaps you would if you were sitting in a more populous marketplace. And at the moment, I think we've got other challenges that go with that, because if you're going to really look at governance and saying, well, we're going to be really strategically focused on some of these large impact technologies and AI being sort of at the front of them, they have to also be aware of things like how do you work in a world of open source or in an agile workforce, or how are you going to work with potentially a lot more contractors who are going to come in as specialists, work with you and disappear again, because there's still a lot of organisations who have not even got a structure that allows for those sorts of behaviours. And so they're actually not even able to adapt some of the kind of the people side of the behaviours you need in governance to step into the space. So I think almost in dual, you need to have a commitment to thinking about a contemporary workplace and what does that look like, because if you're going to have these technologists coming in across all aspects of the business, interfacing with staff on the team, they have to interface in a common language. And so that's part of it. And then actually I don't think there's any excuse today for a board not to be investing significant amount of time in actually leveraging what's available in terms of knowledge. You know, we've never had the access to information that we have today. And I mean, just as one example, and some of you may even be aware that on one of the online platforms, Udacity, recently NZQA here authorised a program at level 8, a master's level qualification online, and that is an autonomous car development. Now, you know, we're starting to actually, even at government, recognise we need some capability, but there are plenty of other ways of learning online, but it takes time and energy and commitment. And so one of the things I would really go back, if you're sitting on an executive team or sitting on a board, is actually saying, this is my key agenda. I'm here to shake things up, to have this hard conversation and put it as number one on the agenda every time. Because if you're not, as a director, you're potentially going to be steering your company towards the cliff because of the pace of change that others will come in and take you over. And I really believe it. There's no time for sitting still now.
Do you think that board role should be so I do a lot of tech advisory to boards. It's almost like they want to dip their toe in but don't want to commit a full-time person to that. Do you think that's sort of just a fear of the unknown, or actually you don't know what's coming? Or do you think boards really need to shift who their members are?
And I think Michelle and I both have this experience regularly when you do dip your toes in with a board and they go, tick, done. Okay, move on, we'll take up the agenda, we'll come back to that in 1 year. It is very rare for a board to say, okay, this is our full focus for the next 6 months until we get a head around it. And so I really do think that this is a massive issue, and one that we have to grapple with as a country if we're going to continue to move forward.
Cool. Brent, talking about grappling as a country, look, you have offshore experience, and I guess you can give us a lens from an overseas person coming into New Zealand. We're really good in New Zealand at doing New Zealand stuff. We're not very good at building stuff that's going to be marketed internationally first. We tend to build things that we market to ourselves. With your offshore lens, what do you think about New Zealand and its international competitiveness? Because there are no borders between AI. And where do you think we are? And do you sort of see that landscape from a worldwide point of view?
So, AI for New Zealand is, well, deep learning AI, so machine-based intelligence and the ability to create and sell it is a massive level playing field for New Zealand. There's no barriers now for New Zealand talent to push products offshore, and that's probably the biggest thing I see. And one of the amazing, what makes Kiwis good at international is our ability to work around issues, and that's one of the key developments that New Zealanders can deliver, right? We can look at the technology that we've got, we can take the thinking that we have, and we can say, well, we want to work a way around this problem. And that's a global issue. In fact, we had a chat just before this. I have this man's card, and I'll be putting his product into Taiwan and Korea. Why? Because it's a problem, right? Cleaning data drives AI, right? Everybody has dirty data, everybody, globally. So how do you clean it? It's a global problem, right? there's a tool set sitting right here that I can use, and I'll take it offshore. Right, that's a classic example. So, in my mind, we're well positioned. New Zealand is well positioned to take the front foot and to drive forward. And basically, there's no reason why we can't see global names being driven out of New Zealand in the future.
David, it's really easy to sit in a room of like-minded people and nod and go, but yeah, surely we all know AI is the thing. Why do you think New Zealand industries in particular are not adopting AI as part of their strategy?
I think you've heard a little bit about it already, a bit of the fear of the unknown, lack of expertise on the team, and probably a little bit of ambiguity around where do I start. It's a big topic. It's massive. We all feel this sense of it's going to change the world fundamentally. So where do I start? And my thinking around that is thinking of AI again like a little baby, baby steps. You're trying to build a capability from the beginning that probably starts with a culture of innovation, a diverse team where you've got the customer in the room or represented in the room along with techies, and co-create and have fun. Like, just start that creation journey.
Okay, I'm going to take your baby analogy. Your baby is now grown up. It is an 18-year-old school leaver. I'm going to open this up to the panel. What do you tell your 18-year-old school leaver to do next? Because this is a different generation.
So I had that conversation yesterday with my 17-year-old nephew.
Okay.
Interestingly, which was kind of funny, right? And looking at him and his abilities, first of all, you got to do what you're good at. Either you can cut code, you can be a scientist, or you can't. But there's basically three areas for AI. You can do or you can manage. And then there's the bit in the middle that joins it. Talking to the boards, there's an issue with senior, like C-level and boards, really understanding what AI is. The management part of this will deliver the link between the CEO and the management and the projects. And then you've got the ability to go to school or go to university and or learn the mechanics of the job. And that, what I'm looking at and where I'm seeing skills development across the region, those are the three areas. It's AI management, data scientists, and then basically what I'd call data engineers. Those people who look at the information and work out how they're going to clean it. And those are really the three areas that are being massively trained across the region and headhunted by Google and Amazon and Microsoft and, out of the countries, in Northern Asia. So that's my advice to him.
Yeah, I think I'm going back to the same thing. So yes, there are the technical skills and the management skills, but in many ways I don't think it changes to the options that you have now. You can either be technically focused and then, it might be a data engineer, a data scientist, that sort of stuff, or even in infrastructure. I mean, all of this runs on Kit. But you can also be creatively engaged. And then it's about, it's the same kind of challenge still. What do people want? What is appealing to them? How do you create great experiences? So you have still the same opportunities with the kind of inclination that you have. A lawyer, or what used to be a lawyer, is maybe more a rule-based person that will be more in the training aspect of AI that applies that clear-cut thinking, right? While what is now a designer will be more in a creative space.
So we've mentioned university and being a data scientist or qualifications. Francis, would you send them to university?
Look, my first point of call would be to say, look, there are so many great startups around the world or large organisations who are working in this space that the first port of call I would say to my children would be to go and find those companies. And even if you work there for free for a year, to be immersed in those environments where they're already doing it, change their conversation, learn the language, see how they work. What does that look like? Because actually, we all know there's going to be multiple careers for us, but also for our kids. And one of the things will be is how to understand how it is deployed within the industry first. Because I think there are rules of industries which are quite different than academia, and I think there's a time for both. But the starting point where you're starting your journey is to go broad as possible and be really hungry for the information and to find those companies. And I think if we as parents all took a bit of time to identify with our kids where they could go. Is it a startup? Or they want to start small locally, or they want to go to a bigger multinational and join a graduate program or do something like that. But actually all the rules have changed. And so learning that cultural fit first would be my first point of contact. And then when you realise where it's going and perhaps the sector you want to deploy it in, because it's not about AI for AI's sake, but you may say, well, I want to work in health, but AI, I'm going to go in as an AI specialist. Or I want to work in transport, or I want to work in logistics, whatever it might be, to figure that out at the same time and then bring the two together.
Okay, we're running low on time. I'm going to squeeze one more question in. So your baby has become an 18-year-old and now is fully grown, middle-aged adult. Welcome to life. So we are all here because some of us are into AI, but some of us are just curious about how to integrate it into our businesses. How do we learn more? How do people like me, like you, who don't have technical training in AI, upskill? Where do we go? How do we learn more? How do we keep up to date? Edward.
Where do you begin? Same places as always, the internet.
Can't always trust the internet.
I think a good start is to figure out where you already are exposed to AI, because you open Netflix, the recommended show, it's AI. You buy something on Amazon, it's AI. You see recommendations, you see fake news everywhere, it's AI. Figuring out what actually is already there. A lot of this can give you inspiration, maybe not the fake news, but just in general. Hopefully not the fake news. There's so much inspiration out of there, and again, you start small, you start with something that's familiar to you. You look around, you find inspiration, and some of this will be applicable to you.
I think following on from what Francis said, I think learn by osmosis. Get in there, get into the use cases, get into the data, meet with the technical teams, meet with the business teams, just get into it and start learning through osmosis.
Interest. I mean, if you're interested, you're going to learn, right? And so, again, similar. You target an area that you want to get into, and then from there you work out what that AI angle is. It's not. The interesting thing is it's if you really know what your end goal is, then you can work backwards. But the biggest problem I think people have is they're kind of trying to work out where to start from. What's that goal? What they're chasing down. So if you've got an area of interest, that's where you start, and then the rest of it can follow. You can plan that.
And then look at MOOCs, or the acronym for Massive Online Open Courses. Most are free. I'll give you a couple of plugs: Udacity, Udemy, Coursera, FutureLearn. Go on. There are deep learning, machine learning, AI, there are cognitive development. There is every possible free course you can imagine. There, hundreds of millions of people are doing exactly this every day. It's most of the developed learning markets are using these online platforms as opposed to going to a bricks and mortar university because they don't have them. So they're there and exist with some of the best educators in the world. So we can all do that.
David?
Just to add to that, it is about interest for me too. What are your passions? Make it relevant to your work life, your personal life. AI for parents, AI for mountain bikers, AI for runners, and what Garmin are doing. That makes it so much more interesting to put the hours in to learn all about it. It is a massive topic, so don't make it generic, make it more personal to you.
Thank you so much. That was our panel on building capability around AI. Please put your hands together for Edward Leonberger, Asa Cox, Francis Valentine, Brent Francis, and David Leach.